Everybody wants to talk about George Pickens and where George Pickens is and everything. I was not at the locker room yesterday. We were on the Bleacher Report live stream, and I got a text that said, guess where George was the entire time? And I said, where? And he said he sat in the little room. There's a little room in the back of the locker room, and he just visible looking at us, but wouldn't come out to talk to us. And I have a feeling George is not going to talk to the media all week until he is forced to by the PR staff. And I think when he is, he's going to give very short, I'm just here so I don't get fined answers to avoid any situations. Mike Tomlin addressed all of it today. The helmet grab on Jordan Lewis at the end of the game, the open effing always, which should have been. Does that bother you? It bothers me. It should be always effing open, right? Like
the grammar of it all.
It bothers me so bad that it just like it reads so dumb. If it was the other way around, it's hard. It's not hard when you do it backwards. Am I alone there?
No. Whenever I saw it initially, I was like, I don't know why he didn't just throw that into Grammarly real quick,
like
click the button and fix it. It bothered me a little bit, but not as much as it clearly bothered you.
It bought the whole game. I kept saying it. I kept saying to everybody around me, I'm like, dude, it's backwards. It doesn't read correctly. It's backwards. But open effing always, and yanking it and then throwing his helmet down so hard during a game that it bounced over the bench, which you had to be there to watch it. And it was pretty crazy. This comes after a week of Broderick Jones having to calm him down on the sidelines in Indianapolis. And I mean, load management that we will talk about in a minute here. But this is what Mike Tomlin had to say today about everything going on with George Pickens.
I didn't have any outline issue with his effort. As I mentioned after the game, I think someone asked about a reduction in his total number of snaps. It's just a snap management thing and an effort to be more productive. In today's game regarding analytics, we do it across a lot of positions, particularly when you look at the totality of a 17-game schedule. I'd imagine Cam Hayward, for example, is playing less snaps than he has, just trying to grow and trying to get optimum productivity among some individuals and going about the best means of doing so. And so that's probably a reflection of the snap totality of last week. Regarding his behavior, I am aware of that. And obviously that has been and will continue to be addressed. I wasn't aware of the messaging. And so, I'm just giving you a knee-jerk response to that.
Has he grown in a way that you expected or thought that you would see him grow both as a person and a player since he's been in the building?
He's certainly gotten better, yes.
You could talk about a number of things there. And at some point, I do want to bring up that he compared the age and snap count limitations of Cam Hayward. Once again, continues to double down on, well, Cam Hayward's on a snap count, so why can't George Pickens be? Because Cam Hayward is 12 years older than George Pickens, man. What? That's why.
Playing defensive line.
And he's been in the league 11 more years. Like, there are reasons, and there are very easy reasons to see. But I think what's very alarming and telling, and very telling, is that Mike Tomlin was asked a number of times if George Pickens has grown as a mature player. And he has said, he never said that he has become a mature player. And it's all about the tone and it's all about the response. But he simply just says, yes, he has grown, certainly. Yes, he has grown. Certainly. Yes, he has gotten better in those areas. Not once is it a full-blown support of, look, George has become this different person. And so it's almost an acknowledgement of he was real bad when he showed up. And now he's less bad, but he's still bad. And there's still work to be done. Him acknowledging that they acknowledged the helmet thing, because to be honest, I could care less about the eye black. Does the eye black bother you? Like, it doesn't. It's dumb. But it doesn't bother me. Like, there's no part. If you don't want to be a role model to kids, man, don't be a role model to kids. And that's okay. Not everybody was. Terrell Owens was not. Randy Moss, for most of his career, was not. It's not for everybody. And George Pickens is not viewed as this role model in the NFL. He's not TJ Watt. He's not Cam Hayward. He's not Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And if you don't want to be that guy, okay, like I'm not gonna fight you for it. I'm not gonna say you're a bad person because of it. Do I think you hold a responsibility as an NFL player? Yeah, I do. I think it comes with what you are and who you are as a player, is to be a role model for these kids. And if you don't want to be that, that's your decision. I don't care about the eye black, to be honest. The yanking the helmet, the throwing the helmet, the complaining, the sitting alone on the bench, the seemingly just losing his place in this team. It's good that Mike Tomlin acknowledged that. It is very good that Mike Tomlin acknowledged that to him. And I believe that he did acknowledge that to him. I have a hard time saying they watched that film on Monday and everybody was just like, all right, well, that was it. Sounds good. We just watched George yank some dude to the ground, but everything's totally fine. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? For me, it's the obvious ones: death, loss, failure. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears while finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. I'm somebody who's benefited from therapy for a long time, and I've been an advocate for therapy for years, and I'm excited to tell you guys about BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. My knee-jerk reaction to this, using Tomlin's words again, was that George is probably closer to on his way out of Pittsburgh than staying in Pittsburgh. And all those talks, all those reports early in the offseason about doesn't matter if they get Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens is going to be paid, were probably wrong, because the Steelers probably had plans to say, we want to see what we have in George, but we do not trust George is going to be able to hold it together as a player, and maybe we need a backup plan to do so. I think it drives the Davante Adams urgency. I think it drives every urgency. And I really do think that George Pickens is closer to being done in Pittsburgh than he is to, I think George is closer to the end of his campaign with the Steelers than he is to maybe playing a full game for them, but definitely signing another deal. Do you agree, or do you kind of disagree?
No, 100%. The one thing that I've noticed is they're not going to give this guy a second contract.
No.
They have always been selective about which wide receivers get second contracts, and you have to basically be a either Hall of Fame talent, aka Antonio Brown, or a stand-up citizen that is also great in your role. And GP is neither of those at this stage of his career. So I think the one thing I will say is I'm not sure they'd go as far as to trade him, because he is uber talented and he is the only guy they have on their roster right now, unless, like you mentioned, they can get somebody back in return. But I do think that it solidifies that they're probably not going to give this guy a contract extension.
Is uber talented worth the distractions though? Have we hit a point where if you could, let's just say you could go out and get Davante. Because there has to be a trade. I agree. You're not going to just trade George Pickens and say, oh, that's it. Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. Go get it, pal. Brandon Johnson, we'll just sign him. No big deal. I agree. They wouldn't do that. If they could get Davante, is the distraction worth, I don't know, 100 yards a game and a guy that shows up sometimes, drops balls other times, and carries a lot of off-the-field issues with him?
The distractions, I don't care about. The effort on the field that I saw Sunday night, that's what I would be concerned with. Because if he gives you the 100
more than
yards,
once.
It does. But if he gives you that 100 yards, he's typically giving you that effort, right? Nobody can question his effort against the Indianapolis Colts the week prior. Yeah, he had that fumble. That wasn't on effort. That's on ball security, and that's on mentality.
Yeah.
It was an effort issue against the Dallas Cowboys. You could see it in the routes he was running. You could see it in that blatantly dropped pass on a pivotal third down in the second half of the football game.
Yep.
If you're getting those effort issues on the field, then it's not worth it. But if it's just the off the field stuff, as of right now, you're trying to win a Super Bowl. Bringing in Davante Adams for George Pickens on the field doesn't change very much. Off the field, it gives you a little bit of a better citizen. But at this point of the season, you want players on the field as well. So I would say it's worth it as long as he starts to show that effort again on the field.
I agree. Like I think George Pickens is one of the best when he's at his best. But this is 2 years in a row now that we have had conversations about George Pickens dogging it, about him, and Mike Tomlin acknowledged it. He acknowledged it in that press conference, saying that George Pickens and the way he was running routes can be interpreted to his limited snap count. He said those exact words. And I think everybody knows it at this point. Like, you're not always going to get 100% out of George Pickens if he feels he is not 100% involved in the game plan. And should he be 100% involved in the game plan? Definitely. But you also have to give 100% effort when you're not. And George doesn't almost ever. He rarely. This is 2 years in a row that we're having these conversations. The second year is coming 5 weeks in. What's next year? It doesn't make it to next year, or do we have to do this again in week 12 when George is doing this? And this is an issue once more. And don't get me wrong, he's going to go out against the Raiders and he's going to have 210 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's going to go to the press conference and he's going to say something slick like, I'm just doing this to shut everybody up. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to do that. He's going to pull a receipt, but that doesn't matter anymore. Nobody cares about that anymore, because at this point, you've done it too many times. At this point, the drama has outweighed your big games. You've actually had more weeks of drama, or maybe equal to the weeks of drama, than you have breakout crazy games. You've had 2 breakout crazy games, and you've had 3 weeks of play that's been called out on tape. I mean, that doesn't even out. So I don't know. The way I look at it is, if you could get Davante, I really do think it opens the door for a George Pickens trade. And I think teams will call, and I think they'll give up big money for George Pickens. I truly do. And I think his talent is worth keeping, but I don't think the Steelers are looking for that anymore. I think this locker room is very close to being a place where guys want to be again, because everybody wanted to come to Pittsburgh, but look at it 2 years ago and the drama that was all over that locker room. It was filled with drama on both sides of the football. I mean, you had Devin Bush, you had George Pickens, you had Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, the Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky situation that was going on. Chooks Okorafor was in there at one point. The Matt Canada nonsense, including possible Matt Canada burner accounts. Like, there is so much, and they have done so much to get rid of as much of it as humanly possible. The last piece, I think there's 2. I think Najee's one of those pieces too, but I think Najee's much less of a piece. The last big piece is George Pickens. And I think that they might make a decision to say, whatever, man, we'll get rid of him. Like, if we have a replacement, his name's Davante Adams, and we'll be okay.